Victims buried the emotions high as President Erdogan vows to cleanse the virus in the Turkish coup that wasn't.
This country's European ambition is all but dead now. This is a country which fits fairly and squarely in the Middle East. And it's run by a man who's expected to tighten his grip on power.
Good evening. President Erdogan is being warned not to use the failed coup in Turkey as a blank cheque against his opponents. But as the crackdown widens, protesters on the streets are demanding the death penalty for those behind the coup. And in the last half hour, further clashes have been reported in Istanbul's second airport. Tonight we'll be live from there and in Ankara. Also tonight, 3 police officers have been shot dead in Baton Rouge. 1 suspect is reported killed, others may still be at large. Labour's Owen Smith, the latest to launch a leadership challenge against Jeremy Corbyn. He declares he intends to be just as radical, but credible too. And in golf, Phil Mickelson battles to become one of the oldest winners of the British Open. 6,000 people are under arrest, including senior military leaders and judges, while Turkey's President Erdogan has declared he can't ignore public demands for the death penalty. As the crackdown against alleged coup plotters gathers pace, world leaders warned it shouldn't become an excuse for Turkey to silence its opponents. In a moment, we'll hear from our international editor in Istanbul, where there have been shots fired in the city's second airport within the last half hour. But first, let's go to our foreign affairs correspondent, Jonathan Rugman, in the capital of Ankara. Jonathan.
Well, first off, I can tell you that incident at the Sabiha Gökçen airport outside Istanbul is apparently over. Calm has been restored. There was an exchange of fire between police and soldiers who were apparently resisting arrest. Though we're also hearing there is an operation underway at the Konya military airbase. The head of the Incirlik airbase in the south of the country is now in detention, and the figures coming through from the authorities are staggering. 6,000 people under arrest, 2,700 judges fired, 190 civilians dead, 100 coup plotters killed as well, as President Erdogan does all he can to mount a counter-coup, if you like, to try and stop those who might move against him from coming against him again and imposing their own will and trying to mount another coup against him here. Just across the street from the presidential palace, they are clearing up after a ferocious battle. For a few extraordinary hours, the Turkish state went to war with itself in its capital's heart. Renegade soldiers seeking to depose their commander-in-chief while he was away from this palace, holidaying on the Turkish coast. Although Friday night's coup failed, it may have sealed Turkey's destiny for decades to come. This country's European ambition is all but dead now. This is a country which fits fairly and squarely in the Middle East. And it's run by a man who's expected to tighten his grip on power. These are pictures of Air Marshal Akin Öztürk and other alleged members of this conspiracy to bring President Erdogan down. Some of the men are injured. We don't know how. The government claims over 100 others involved are now dead. Some 6,000 people have been detained in less than 48 hours. These soldiers fled to Greece in a helicopter to claim asylum, but they're likely to be sent back. Yesterday, a policeman was filmed pulling a rebel serviceman from his tank. And the president, visiting Istanbul today, is now talking of cleansing the entire government.
At every level of government, the period of cleaning this virus will continue, because this body, my friends, forms metastasis. Like a cancer virus, it spreads all around the government.
The rebels attacked Turkey's parliament from the air. There aren't many democracies in the Islamic world, and this one remains in serious danger, even after the flames have died down. Because even though every opposition party has condemned this coup attempt, nobody knows just how much further the president will go to stifle dissent. Many of the roads around government ministries are blocked in case any coup plotters stage a comeback, though tanks and armoured cars have been abandoned or returned to barracks. Last night, demonstrators here called for the ringleaders to be hanged, and the president's advisers have called for a week of such protests, presumably to show the world just whom is in charge. I want the president for life, this man told me this afternoon, as long as he is healthy, as long as his memory is intact. And so, as the alleged plotters are led away to an uncertain fate, a counter-coup seems to be underway, one led by Mr. Erdogan himself. This crisis an opportunity for him, and one he won't waste. Jonathan Rugman, Channel 4 News, Ankara.
As the coup attempt has starkly revealed, Turkey has become a nation deeply divided, caught between the twin perils of authoritarianism and turmoil. Journalists, artists and academics have been silenced, while critics of the government now face being branded as traitors. Well, our international editor Lindsay Hilsum is in Istanbul. Lindsay, what's the latest?
Kathy, I'm here in Taksim Square and I'm not sure if you can hear that there's music because some of President Erdogan's supporters are still out here celebrating. But you look at who's been arrested. One of them, his top military aide. You look at who was killed. One of them, the son of his top political aide. President Erdogan went to that funeral today. And so I think from that, the conspiracy theories which are going around saying, oh, he orchestrated this in order to gain more power for himself, that looks unlikely when you see how many people were killed. Having said that, he's certainly using it in order to arrest anyone who he would regard as an enemy, including those who follow Fethullah Gulen. He is the man who is being blamed for this coup by Erdogan's supporters in Pennsylvania, a religious leader. Maybe we'll never know if it was really him or not. What we do know is President Erdogan here still has a huge amount of popularity.
They died defending Turkish democracy. That's what their children and their children's children will be told. Today, President Erdogan mourned civilians and police officers who lost their lives in the coup attempt. He was showing respect, but also consolidating his power and popularity. Last night, his supporters were demonstrating their loyalty. They gathered in Taksim Square, a place more normally associated with the tear gassing of anti-government protests.
This is a happy crowd here tonight because their man has won. On the night of the coup attempt, everybody came out on the streets, even those who hate the president, because they wanted to stop the military takeover. But these people, they love President Erdogan. For them, the president and democracy, it's the same thing.
For the demonstrators, nationalism and Islam go together. The military is defiantly secular. The older generation remember the days when there was a coup every decade.
In the past, coups did terrible damage to our country, to our people, and to democracy.
In those days, we couldn't protest. We did what they told us to do. But today, the people know what's going on. We won't give up on this country.
But only a few thousand came out last night. Others fear repression and worse in the wake of the coup attempt. The coup was doomed after the president told people to come out on the streets, using his iPhone to talk to a CNN Turk presenter. Then soldiers invaded the TV station.
I see a just 20 years old boy shaking, and with a gun, a big gun. So what should I do? Should I tell him that, okay, calm down, buddy, or should I stop and, okay, take me? But he was not something that took us.
The channel had been under huge pressure from President Erdogan before for not towing the government line. On the night, they defied the soldiers, but that doesn't mean he'll tolerate them now.
I'm worried there will be much more pressure on journalists. There were pressure on journalists, and it will be much more worse for yesterday.
Grief notwithstanding, President Erdogan is now stronger than ever. The danger is that he will use this moment to crush all his enemies, whether or not they had anything to do with the attempted coup.
Well, let's go to some breaking news tonight. 3 police officers have been shot dead in the US city of Baton Rouge, according to the city's mayor. The officers were ambushed after responding to a call. 3 others have been injured. It's just over a week since 5 officers were shot dead in Dallas. Let's go live now to our Washington correspondent, Kylie Morris, who's in Cleveland ahead of tomorrow's Republican convention. Kylie, this is a rapidly developing situation. What can you tell us?
Well, Fatima, this, of course, is Baton Rouge, where tensions have been very high for the past couple of weeks after the killing of Alton Sterling, a black man who was killed by white police officers. We saw massive protests in Baton Rouge last weekend. However, there were no protests happening at 9 o'clock this morning, local time, when there was a 911 call to the police that there was a man with an assault rifle. There had been shots fired. I think we should have some amateur footage of the moment when police arrived on the scene. Perhaps you can hear, you can hear the gunfire ringing out there. The police apparently caught completely off guard by this. Not only 3 officers killed, but 4 officers severely wounded, currently being treated in hospital. Here's just a quick update, what we've heard from the Baton Rouge police in the last hour or so.
There's a suspect that's down right now. We're checking him out. We're going to make sure there aren't any explosives around, so we're trying to secure the scene before we give any detailed information. We're checking the scene with our robot to see if there are any explosives in the area and make sure there aren't any explosives on him, but he is dead.
So, Kylie, with all this high tension, how's it playing into the political situation where you are in Cleveland?
I think it's important to say, Fatima, that we can in no way confirm that there's any political context to these killings as yet. But yes, Donald Trump will be here in a few days' time. He's already been describing himself as the law and order candidate. We've heard from figures further right, for example, Rudy Giuliani in the past week, who's blamed any violence against the police, including what happened in Dallas, on the Black Lives Matter movement. So nerves are frayed, and there is political mileage to be made out of this. But as details emerge, I think what's most important to remember today is that these officers now bring the total of officers killed in the US to 29 this year. So real concerns here about violence against the police.
Thanks very much, Kylie. Well, mourners have been paying tribute to the 84 people who died in the Bastille Day lorry attack in Nice, laying flowers in their memory. 6 people are now in custody, including the ex-wife of the killer, Mohamed Bouhlel. Officials said bereaved families have now begun the long and painful process of identifying their loved ones, while 18 people are still in a life-threatening condition. From Nice, Porrick O'Brien reports.
We drove down the promenade in Nice today. 1 mile. 84 people dead. At least 10 children. 85 people still in hospital. 18 of them critical. And all along, small floral tributes where people fell.
Incroyable. Unbelievable. Why did he do this to us? Why? Why? We don't know why.
We pass a bar with CCTV outside. On Thursday night, families scrambling out of the way of the lorry. Inside, hiding between the tables and chairs. It also emerged today that 2 police vans had been blocking the boulevard on the night, but had moved on hours before the attack. The driver, Lawej Bouhlel, planned it all to the nth degree. Another 2 people were arrested in connection with the attack this morning, thought to be an Albanian couple who were said to have supplied the killer with a gun. 7 arrests in total. A picture is emerging of a very organised attack on the promenade here in Nice. For example, we've learned that in 2 days in the run-up to the attack itself, he recce'd the site. Also, in interviews with those arrested and with the police going through his phone records, a clearer idea of the logistics involved. French media are reporting that police found a coded text sent from his phone before the attack. It translates, "Bring more weapons, bring them in 5 to see." The housing estate where he once lived with his estranged wife. We learned from neighbours today that as well as beating her, he once attacked his mother-in-law. It precipitated the couple's separation. We were also told about a gym he visited regularly. This is the gym he would attend. We've been inside talking to people who knew him. They said he would boast of taking steroids, and they told us that he would attend salsa classes here, but got thrown out of the classes for, and I quote, perving over the women in the class. And again, talk of rapid radicalisation. An ideology twisted provides the trip switch for a twisted mind. Last night, the French Interior Minister appealed for, quote, patriotic French citizens to volunteer for the army reserves to tackle terrorism. The mile along Promenade des Anglais feels like forever. Then, a street you won't have heard of, Boulevard de la Madeleine. According to locals, 16 people from this street alone died on the promenade.
Now, the Labour leadership contender Owen Smith has promised to make fighting inequality the party's top priority, calling for a radical but credible Labour movement. The MP was launching his formal leadership bid in his Pontypridd constituency, warning the party risked falling apart if it failed to act as a proper team. Here's our correspondent, Victoria MacDonald.
Delayed by events in Nice on Friday, today Owen Smith finally launched his leadership challenge, warning of a clear and present danger of a split in the party if Jeremy Corbyn remains leader.
We need more than posturing. We need more than sloganising. We need for this generation of Labour men and women to be putting to the people our vision of what we will do in the future to create that better Britain, to build a future for our children.
So this is where it all moves to tomorrow. Angela Eagle and Owen Smith will take part in a hustings for fellow Labour MPs. Those MPs in turn will have until 5 o'clock on Wednesday to nominate their preferred candidate. Now, what isn't clear is whether the candidate with the least nominations will be persuaded to stand down. So there's only one name on that ballot sheet against Jeremy Corbyn.
And indeed, in a joint interview earlier in the day, Mr Smith and Angela Eagle were directly asked if one of them should stand aside.
I think it's too early to talk about that.
I think one of us standing would be better, is the honest answer, but I think the PLP has got to be a grown-up organisation and try and come to a decision in the next couple of days as to who it is.
There was more criticism too today for Mr Corbyn from former Shadow Arts Minister Thangam Debonair, who posted her reasons for quitting on social media.
Mr Corbyn appointed me and press releases without my knowledge or consent whilst I was in the middle of cancer treatment. He then sacked me the next day when he realised he had given away part of someone else's role, but didn't bother to tell me that either.
The MP also goes on to describe the difficulty in getting a meeting with Mr Corbyn.
But then he was missing in action during the EU referendum, including going on a week's holiday 3 weeks before the day. I found that unforgivable.
A wreath-laying ceremony today, perhaps too potent a symbol given the state of the party, and ahead of another threatened split tomorrow during the critical debate in Parliament on Trident.
Rescue teams have now resumed their search for 3 men who were killed when Didcot Power Station partially collapsed, now that the demolished building has been declared safe. The decommissioned site was brought down early this morning using 10 remote-controlled robots. 4 workers died in the disaster in February, crushed under 20,000 tonnes of rubble, but only 1 body has been recovered so far. In golf, Henrik Stenson and Phil Mickelson are locked at the top of the leaderboard in the final round of the British Open at Troon. The pair were both on 16 under par through 12 holes, despite winds gusting up to 25 miles an hour. With the latest, our sports reporter Jordan Jarrett-Bryan.
Phil Mickelson was in the mood to resume his 2-man contest with Henrik Stenson for this year's Open.
How about that for a start? The shape of things to come.
Stenson, aiming to become the first Swede to win the Open, went toe-to-toe with the American. Andrew Johnson was the outsider, trying his best to break up the Stenson-Mickelson duel.
Ooh, a little gift.
A frustrating tournament for Rory McIlroy came to an end with a missed birdie putt on -4.
It'll be a par. It'll be a round of
-17 on the 11th hole. Stenson had the chance to apply some pressure, but failed.
And the latest at Troon is that Stenson leads Mickelson by 2 on the 15th with just 3 holes to play. Cricket and Pakistan have beaten England in the first test at Lord's. Pakistan bowled England out for 207 to claim a 75-run victory and a 1-0 lead in the 4-match series. Tennis and defending champions Great Britain have beaten Serbia to reach the semi-finals of the Davis Cup. Kyle Edmund defeated Serbia's Dusan Ljovic in straight sets to give his team an unassailable 3-1 lead in the tie. Both Great Britain's Andy Murray and Serbia's Novak Djokovic sat out the quarter-final in Belgrade. Great Britain will face Argentina in the last 4. Colombia's Harlinson Pantano has won stage 15 of the Tour de France, while Britain's Chris Froome remains in the overall lead. Pantano claimed his first stage victory in the race in an exciting finish in Couleur. Britain's Adam Yates leads the Young Riders contest and is 3rd overall. We're back tomorrow at 7. Until then, that's Channel 4 News. Good evening.